And I also think it's an important factor that if you're using ChatGPT to create something that needs to be factual, you have to double check it. You can't just take
Absolutely.
it at its word. One of the things that a company that I own does is we actually create content using AI tools, but I'm very clear this is AI generated, but it's human reviewed.
Imagine a large language model as a super smart library robot.
Now,
Literally.
see, it's words like that, though, that make people get all nervous and think, oh, wow, it can hallucinate. We're adding a human characteristic to a computer. Hi, this is Beth Mast. Welcome to Business Alchemy. Today, I'm here with Jonathan Mast, and we're going to be talking about a hot topic, and that is AI. And how does it affect your business? How you doing today, Jonathan?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much. I'm excited about this topic. I mean, it's everybody's talking about AI, and I know we've used it a lot in both of our businesses, and we chat about it after hours and all that. I'm really excited to share some stuff with our audience today.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let's start today with just a kind of a brief overview of what AI is. I think there's a lot of confusion just about what that means.
I think that's a really good question. Well, if I can, me, I'm so passionate about this topic. I love chatting about it. For most of our audience, they're probably old enough to remember a movie called Terminator, and we saw in there the AI and what was happening and it taking over. And some of us have even watched things like Star Trek and seen AI there. And could it be sentient and all that? Well, that's not what AI is today. Sorry,
Well,
guys, it's just not that. I mean, I look at it this way. AI today is like the world's most vast encyclopedia that has almost instant recall to any context within that. And it has this neat ability to then query back to you and respond to you based upon your questions. But it's
mhm.
not sentient. It's not taking over the world. It's not any of that. It is this amazing, vast array of knowledge that is now available at our fingertips. And that can provide so much value, whether it's my favorite use, helping me rewrite an email so it sounds good, or doing something much more complex. What do you think, Beth? I mean, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think one thing that people need to realize is that it's the way it's presented that it's like talking to a person, but it's
Mm,
that person doesn't have feelings. It's just an algorithm that gives us back information in a way that's conversational, and that's
yes.
a big difference from something that can actually think and feel. It can't think. It just puts together mathematical functions to give us information back and answer our questions. But it's not sentient. It's not a person. It can't take over the world.
No, agreed. Maybe we should talk a little about what is AI good for, especially for entrepreneurs and business people, and how can
Mhm.
they use it? And maybe more importantly, at least from my perspective, is how can their teams use it? Because I think the really cool thing about AI personally is that it can help us save time. It can
Oh,
help us
yeah.
increase our profit margins, which if you bought groceries this year in 2024, you know how important that is. And it can also deliver more value or allow us to deliver more value for our clients. But that's kind of, big conceptual stuff. From your perspective, Beth, what are some things that an entrepreneur, business owner can use AI for themselves and for their team? Where do they get started?
Well, I tell you, the cost savings for me of my time is actually in the research it can do for me. So, just being able to ask a question, just like I have on Google for years, and have it give me a concise answer and not just feedback a bunch of different websites for me to go search through. Wow, is that a time saving? So, I definitely use it for a lot of research. That's like my main purpose for it. So, what do you use it for?
I use it for a lot of different things. As I mentioned earlier, one of my favorite uses is for helping me write better emails. I've got
Mhm.
ADD, so my brain has a hard time sticking around on a topic long enough to sometimes give it justice. And especially if I'm writing email to a client, to really give it the thought that I want. I'm really good at outlining it, and I can go, okay, here's the 6 things I want to make sure I cover.
Right.
But then putting that together in words that make sense and come across the wrong way, I admit I struggle with that.
Mhm.
AI allows me to do that because I can now give it the bullet points that I want, which I'm really good at that. And I can do that in a few seconds and say, okay, here's the email I got. And oftentimes I'll literally paste the email from a client in, and here's how I want to respond, and
Right.
help me write a response based on, and it now knows me because I use something in AI, in ChatGPT at least, called custom instructions, where
Mhm.
I can tell it about me. So, little things. It knows my name. It knows that I work for Whitebeard Strategies. It knows I'm the founder. It knows what we do. It knows, for example, my personality type from Myers-Briggs. So when it responds to that email, it has all of that information, and it's going to respond in a tone that resembles me. Now, it's
Mhm.
not copy paste, but I can take an email that would have easily made me struggle for 15 to 20 minutes in the past, and I can turn it around in 2 to 3 minutes now. And
And
like you said, that's a huge time saving. So that's one of many areas, but I love it for that. The other one that I can't leave without mentioning is brainstorming. I love it when I need to think through something and having it help guide me through that process and ask me questions as well. And that's something a lot of people I don't think realize. You can go to the AI tools and say, I want to brainstorm about this, and here's my thoughts. Now ask me questions, and it will literally analyze what you've done based upon its encyclopedic knowledge and come back and ask you relevant questions to help you think through that process. And I think that's so valuable.
Mhm. I use it a lot to write emails and converse with clients and such as well, and even to talk to my team. Give them motivational speeches, or have it give me suggestions on a quote for the day, uh, meeting certain requirements or certain targets I'm trying to hit. I've always been a good editor, but writing from scratch takes me time. And ChatGPT, which is the one I use primarily, although I use others as well, it saves me time because then I don't have to write it from scratch. I still need to go through it though and make sure it says what I want it to say. And sometimes
Absolutely.
I also notice that it gets it wrong. Have you ever noticed that? Especially
Oh,
when you're
yeah.
looking for something that's detailed and is something that's factual, it gets it wrong sometimes. And so I know that some people may just think, oh, this is the perfect solution. I don't need to check it. But I have found that it can help you, but you still need to review it. You still need to check it. Have you come across that?
I have, and people often ask me why, if it's trained on all this stuff, why does it get stuff wrong? And I just want to ask
Good
you,
question.
have you ever done a search and got contradictory information from Google?
Mhm.
Well, ChatGPT, and again, when I say that, I'm talking ChatGPT, Bard, Claude, kind of as one thing, but it's hard to say all three of them together. So I'll just say ChatGPT. ChatGPT's been trained on all of this data. It's not necessarily smart enough to know that if it has conflicting data, which one is
Right.
true. And so, if it says Abraham Lincoln gave this address on this website and he did it, as long as it fits within what the parameters, what it thinks could be true about Abraham Lincoln, it's going to assume it's true. And it's going to sometimes quote that. And other times, keep in mind that the model is instructed to make assumptions. So if we don't give it enough information, a good example, it's like working with a teammate at your company. If you're working with a coworker on a project, and maybe it's somebody that reports to you, so you're directing that project and you don't give them enough background information, think of ChatGPT that same way, except now assume that you've told that employee or that team member of yours, if you don't know, make an assumption so that you can proceed. Well,
Mhm.
ChatGPT does that all the time. If you don't give it enough information, and importantly, if you don't tell it, ask me clarifying questions, one of my favorite things to add on to any prompt. If you don't do that, ChatGPT has been trained to just make an assumption so that it can move forward. And
Mhm.
that means sometimes it does what we call hallucinate, and it just makes stuff up,
Now,
literally.
see, it's words like that though that make people get all nervous and think, "Oh, wow, it can hallucinate." We're adding a human characteristic to a computer, and there are many people out there then that think you're very literal in that. And of course, it's not literal. The
No, I'm
computer
sure there have
can't
been no drugs involved,
hallucinate.
no mushrooms, nothing like that whatsoever.
Doesn't have a
But
high fever or anything like
yeah,
that.
But
Now you
what it will do though so we probably need to take a step back.
Yeah,
The
I'd like you
this
I
is
think you're going a little fast here. We need to back up a little bit like you're talking about. And I want you to talk about prompts too, because not everybody might know what a prompt is and the
mm,
importance. Because you just said something about, how you type something in, what information you give it, having it ask you questions back. Prompts is critical to that.
it is. If I can, I want to take one step back a little further here and something that's really important for people to understand. We talked at the beginning about what AI is and what it's
Right.
not. AI right now, they're called large language models. You may have seen it LLM or large language model. Don't worry about the term. What it really means is that these tools, and that's all they are, they're programs, like you said, they're ones and zeros, they're computer
Mhm.
programs, they're algorithms. They're designed to predict the next word. And that means that they're predicting based upon their experience, which is really just knowledge that they've sucked up and been taught on. They're trying to predict the next word. So if I'm having them write an email for me, it's literally looking and trying to predict each word in succession.
Mhm.
That's why if you don't prompt well, and I'll explain prompting in a minute, it doesn't always do a good job because you haven't given it context. So when I talk about prompting is simply conversing with. I like not to use the word conversing with because too many people get a little too freaked out thinking
Right.
this is a humanoid. It's not. It's a program. But admittedly, it's a program that's been trained on more data than what you're probably familiar with. Certainly more data than is in my mind. And a prompt is
I doubt
literally
that, by
just
the way.
what's that?
I doubt that it's more data that's than what's in your mind.
Well, maybe not that what's passed through, but certainly what's stuck. How about that? But when you're talking to that, you're typing in commands technically. So, when we think of a
Mhm.
computer program, we give a computer program commands. If I'm working in a spreadsheet like Microsoft Excel and I'm putting together a formula, that's often called a command. I'm putting together something, I'm telling the computer what to do. I'm really doing the same thing with AI, except that it does understand to a large extent. It's programmed to interpret human language well, so I can converse with it, much as Beth, I might converse with you if we were collaborating on a project together. And that is very effective. So that's called prompting. But don't let that freak you out if you're listening and go, I don't know what a prompt is. A prompt is simply your part of the conversation that
Right.
you're having with ChatGPT. I wanted to pull up one from this morning here. Just I'm going to grab my phone. So I apologize if you're on video and I'm looking down. So, I wanted to work this morning on developing a new online course. And Beth, we were talking about this
Yes.
last night. And so I wanted to brainstorm, as I mentioned. I love that. And I just want to share with you my initial prompt. And it's a long one, but think of it this way. This is just if I was working with Beth to help me do this, or I was working with somebody on my team, this is probably the same way I'd say it. And I'm just going to read it here a minute. And it says, you're an expert at online courses, sales funnels, and converting prospects into paying customers with a low barrier tripwire offer and then upselling them with 2 order bumps. You've learned everything possible from Russell Brunson and his team at ClickFunnels. That's a lot to be said, but what I'm basically trying to do is set the stage because remember, AI knows this vast amount of information, and I want it to narrow in really quickly to know what part of its information that I want it to reference. So I tell it, this is what I want you to reference. And then I said, I want to begin by brainstorming the best way to productize an offer to my audience. That audience is 20,000 plus entrepreneurs who are a member of my private Facebook group, AI Prompts for Entrepreneurs. So now I'm giving it some scope. I'm giving it some reference. Again, I can't just say I want to create a course, do it for me. It's not going to know anything.
Right.
Then I tell it, and I know this is long, but this is, if you're listening, this is how you converse and get great results out of AI. I'm going to share my thoughts and goals, and I want you to analyze and, if appropriate, challenge my ideas to help me develop a successful offer with at least 2 order bumps. Now, I won't read you the rest of it, but it goes on for 6 more paragraphs, guys. But the amazing thing about this is that prompt took me longer to write than the rest of the conversation did, but it then analyzed what I did. It, of course, told me I was brilliant, which, as Beth, you pointed out, that's why I love talking to ChatGPT, because it tells me I'm brilliant. Not always, but once in a while. It didn't say brilliant, but it said I had some good ideas. But what I loved is it then asked me for some clarification, which was good. That got me to think through things. And it asked me some questions that I hadn't thought about, and encouraged a few things that I also hadn't thought about to make this a better offer that would pertain more to my audience. And by defining, one, the general scope that I wanted it to act in, I wanted it to act as an expert in creating this type of a course, that I wanted it to use this style. I wanted it, if you're not familiar and you're not in the marketing business, Russell Brunson is a serial entrepreneur who owns a company called ClickFunnels. He's got multiple books out. He's well known. So I can reference him, and the AI knows what he knows, not everything, but it knows his style. It knows the type of things he's written about. It knows his books. I'm sure it's actually scanned all of his books. And so now it gives it context and how to respond to me. Then I told it what I wanted to accomplish, who I wanted to do that for, the audience that I wanted to do. And you guys may be going, wow, that seems like a whole lot of work. It took a couple minutes, but the key is the value that I then got out of it. And we continued conversing back and forth, and I'll use that prompting back and forth for probably about 20 minutes. But in that 20 minutes, I now have an initial course offering, an outline that I'm going to be putting together on how to teach people how to prompt, just like we're talking now. I have an upsell offer, because we know in marketing that if I have a low, what we call tripwire offer that's very inexpensive, I can then sometimes do what's called an order bump and get some of that audience to spend more money on a second product. And I have a third, or a second order bump, or a third product that if you opt in for the second, maybe you might be interested in the top. And they call it a funnel because, as you imagine, you get people coming at the top, the funnel's wide, and then it narrows as it comes down. The number of people that are going to take that second order bump are going to be a very small percentage of the people that buy the first one. But by doing that, I can increase the value I'm delivering to the clients. And from a successful businessman's perspective, I can probably increase the lifetime revenue that I'm generating out of this course offering. And normally, Beth, as you know, that's a process that would sometimes take days to work through and to strategize and to figure out. And I've now got the framework for all of that done and ready to proceed. It'll take me a couple more hours to finish out, but instead of days, I'll have the whole thing accomplished in an hour or two.
Wow, that was a lot. You can tell you're definitely very passionate about AI. I know we talk about it a lot. You've got a Facebook group on it. You speak around the country regarding AI, but I think it would be great to really narrow it down into maybe some helpful bites for the
Mm,
average business person, because the average business person is not writing courses, they're not writing books. They're just trying to get through their day. They're just trying to make things a little simpler for themselves. So what are some really basic things that you would recommend that they could do, the average Joe, to use AI to help make their life better, to make business
mm.
run more smoothly, to save money, to have efficiencies? What are some simple suggestions you would have for them?
You're right. I get passionate. I apologize. It's so dang exciting to me. I love this stuff. But I think, if you're played around with it a little bit, or you're not sure, the first thing I want to encourage you to do is you need to pick a tool. There's three main tools. There's ChatGPT, put out by a company called OpenAI, and it's also partially owned by Microsoft. There's Google with Google Bard. And there's a third company that you may or may not have heard of called Claude, which is run by a company called Anthropic. The names don't matter so much. You basically have three models: ChatGPT, Bard, or Claude. Pick one. My recommendation is highly to pick either ChatGPT or Claude. Bard is, well, let's just say, in my opinion, Google's missed the boat on AI, and they
I
haven't caught
agree.
up yet. Yeah.
Mhm.
So avoid Bard, even if you've got access. Start with ChatGPT. It's great. It has internet access. It's very easy to use. It's also very inexpensive. You can start for free. You don't even need the paid version. In fact, I recommend for the first month, don't pay for it. Well, I think it's a great investment, and I just did a video the other day about how I'd give up Netflix and a lot of other things before I'd stop paying for ChatGPT. Don't pay for it right away. Start using it. Start getting familiar with it. And next time someone asks you a question, whether it's a prospect, a teammate, Anybody. Go to ChatGPT and say, I'd like you to help me write a response. Here was the question, and here's what I'm thinking about. Help me write a better response.
Mhm.
That's a great way to start. It can be answering a social media post. It can be an email. It could be a phone call that you need to make to somebody and you just want to put together an outline so you can follow that as you're making that phone call.
Mhm.
That's all. And when you talk to it, and Beth, you mentioned this right up front, don't try to think and overthink it. Imagine, if you would, that you have a brand new executive assistant who's working with you. Incredibly competent, incredibly knowledgeable, but doesn't know you very well yet because it's their first day at work. You want them to help you write an email to respond to a client. Give ChatGPT the same information that you'd give that brand new executive assistant.
I
That's it.
do I do want to point out a couple different things about that. You made the comment of writing, I want to write this better. I think being a little bit more specific and not general in that area is better, because ChatGPT's view of what better is might not be what your view
So
is. So
true.
I often use words like rewrite this for clarity, for
Mm.
professionalism, for grammar, or I'll tell them who the audience is or the writing style I want it to come across. So I'm giving it really specific, tangible information that then it can mimic. And I think it is very interesting how it can actually mimic writing styles of famous authors. But
Mm.
I wanted to ask you back, you had mentioned Russell Brunson. Russell Brunson sells his stuff. So how did ChatGPT get it, and who gave them the right to scan that in? Whereas I've tried to have it look for certain writers and it doesn't have access to that information. So how does it get its information from, authors?
Well, that's a great question, and actually very timely because there's a number of lawsuits that are currently pending against ChatGPT and Google and Anthropic for having essentially sucked up all this data. The answer is I don't know how they did it, and I'm not sure. But what I compare it to is, imagine for just a moment, and I don't have my bookcase here in front of me, but if I had that, I could grab many of the books that I have, and let's say I had bought a book of Russell Brunson's, and I read that book would inspire me and give me knowledge. And then I would use the things I'd learned in that to help do things better that were related to the
Mhm.
things he taught. That's not plagiarism. That's not copyright infringement. I'm literally using the knowledge I've gained and that experience that I learned from reading a book to provide an answer to my problem that I have. And that ultimately is how AI is working. AI is not necessarily quoting me paragraph by paragraph. Here's how Russell Brunson, in his book Expert Secrets, said to create a sales funnel. That's not what it's doing, but it is probably familiar with what he's got. The other thing to keep in mind, that if you're talking about anyone who's a historical figure or who's a prolific content creator, they largely have volumes and volumes and volumes of publicly available information that's out there.
Right.
And the models have essentially vacuumed all of that up,
Mhm.
analyzed it, and it's now part of their knowledge base. But I do want to reiterate with people that there's a huge difference between knowledge base and, again, copyright and plagiarism, at least in my mind. I'm not an attorney, but when I go talk to let's say I talk to a consultant, and a good example is, Beth, I know Valor Circle last year started implementing EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating
Right.
System.
Mhm.
When I go hire a consultant to help me be my integrator or whatever, that consultant's been trained how? Well, by reading the books that have been put out by Gino Wickman and his team on that, by
Right.
maybe going through training materials. And you and I know one of them in particular through Seven Figure Agency, Lynn Askin. And Lynn does a great job. Lynn's been trained on all of that information. Yet when I hire him, even though he uses that knowledge and information that he's gained, he's not plagiarizing or copyright infringing on copyrights that Gino Wickman had. That's not what he's doing.
Mhm.
He's simply been trained and learned about that and now offers consulting to do that. AI is similar. It's not a perfect analogy, but it's very similar. It has this information and now it has relevant things that it can reference to give you feedback.
Mhm. Mhm. I will mention that obviously there's a lot of content out there that's public domain, meaning that it's beyond the time frame that legally the original author can claim it and sell it. Maybe the
Hmm.
author's passed away. It's a long time, so a lot of those authors obviously have passed, and their work has become public domain. So I know it gets a lot of its information that way. I also know that it takes a lot of information from websites, so that if someone has done a summary of a book, if someone has taught on a book or does training or something that the internet can access, then it uses that information as well. But you also get some inaccuracies, such as sometime if you go on and you look up some kind of minor character of Homer's in like the Iliad or the Odyssey, it gets it wrong. It doesn't know who that character is, or it might mix a couple characters or characters up. And I think that's where that hallucinating comes in. And I also think it's an important factor that if you're using ChatGPT to create something that needs to be factual, you have to double check it. You can't just take
Absolutely.
it at its word. It is not perfect. It is not, God. It's not omnipresent and knows all. It is just gathering information from a database and being able to write that in a way that sounds human. It also reminds me of when it writes that information to sound human, it actually has like perfect grammar, and that there are teachers out there that will assume that a student has used ChatGPT because it puts it through one of those chat AI checkers.
Hmm.
And I have written content myself that I have then gone and put it into like zero GPT. Is that what that's called? Zero chat?
Yep.
Okay.
That's
And
one
it
of
will
them. Yeah.
say it was, 75% written by AI, and I wrote it. So I know it's wrong. And it's really bothersome to me that one, the educational facilities out there are using some of those programs to judge a student's work, when if you're just really good at grammar and can construct a really good sentence, it's going to assume that you've cheated on that. So I think that's a whole nother kind of um, result or problem that has come up as we try to adjust to a world now with AI in it.
Well, no doubt. And, it reminds me a lot of in elementary school, we weren't allowed to use calculators. And then when we got into middle school, we were. And it was like, hang on, why couldn't we use a calculator last year and we can this year? And, I remember the teachers going, well, now you understand the concept, so it's okay to use
Right.
tools to make it faster.
Hmm.
And I think that's something that the educational world in general, and there are some that are very much on the edge of doing this, but need to understand that part of the education now has changed in that it's how to use these tools effectively.
Hmm.
Beth, when you and I look to hire somebody nowadays, and I know I'm hiring a position right now, I'm far more interested in if they know how to use the tools than if they have all the knowledge, because I
Right.
know if they can find the answer,
Hmm.
then they're going to be a good employee. I don't
Right.
need them to regurgitate it to me. I don't, because I know there's things that they're not going to know. That's okay. I want them to have the experience to know how to go to Google and Google something and learn it. How to ask perplexity.ai, which is another tool, by the way, that I love for fact checking. How to use ChatGPT, because those are important things.
Hmm.
I think I gave you
Hmm.
an example the other day. I had a coworker ask me just the other day, using a video editing software, how to add some time to the beginning of it. And while I don't do a lot of video editing, I happen to know this tool well. And so they'd reached out and said, hey, how do I add some time? We need some, just literally like a second of blank air at the beginning. It was a great question. I wasn't quite sure how to do it. So what did I do? I went to perplexity.ai. It's very similar to Google. And I said, how do I add a second of blank time at the beginning of a Descript video? Descript being the application.
Right.
And it gave me 3 paragraphs and told me step by step, do this, this, and this. I copy and pasted it and sent it back to my coworker. And their response was, wow, I didn't think of that. Not a problem. But it's that knowledge and those capabilities that we want our teams to learn, I didn't need to be an expert on Descript to answer that question. I
Mhm,
simply needed to know how to ask it to a tool that could give me the answer,
mhm.
and that was productive. So going back to where you're starting with education, I think that's something that our educational institutions in general need to embrace a little bit more, about the fact that if they're helping people learn skills that'll get them jobs, which I hope is kind of at the forefront of what we're trying to do, that leveraging ChatGPT like a calculator is not necessarily a bad thing.
Well, and I could do an entire podcast on my opinion of higher education in particular, and the fact that they are so far behind, the times and what's actually happening in the business arena. It could be 10 years before they even catch up to where we are now. And in 10 years, AI will be on a whole different level.
Oh yeah. Well, and again, it's the nature of how they work. I'm not blaming education per se, although I'd love to do that podcast with you. It's the nature they work. I've been invited to serve on the advisory board for a university about their AI program, and
Mhm.
I'm excited about that, and I'd like to do it. I really would. But and again, this is nothing against the university because I don't have the specifics yet, but they've already put together their course for an offering that's going to be launching in the spring. AI is changing so fast right now
Yes.
that, I'm speaking in Dallas in a week and a half. I have yet to finalize what I'm saying in Dallas in 10 days. Why? Because AI is changing so fast. There will be things that will change in the next 10 days that I better update in my presentation, or I'm going to be out of sync with what's actually happening.
Mhm.
So when you're a university or anybody like that that's trying to put together coursework, and necessarily they can't do it 2 days in advance. I get that. They've now put together a syllabus based on information that was accurate last fall.
Right.
In the world of AI, that's like asking, let me think, who can I think of that's I'm going to pick on Jimmy Carter. Nothing bad about Jimmy Carter. He's an ex-president. He's probably a brilliant man, but he's old. Okay. I think he's in his 90s. It'd be like me asking Jimmy Carter to tell me what the bleeding edge of AI was about. Chances are Jimmy's not going to know that. Nothing against him as a person, but that's probably not what he's focused on. And unfortunately, higher education gets stuck in that with so many things, especially fast changing topics. And
Mhm.
AI is changing at the speed of light, literally. So yeah, I'm sorry, I'm going down that path already. I should come back to where we're talking about AI.
I wanted to mention Perplexity AI. You brought that up. It wasn't
Mhm.
one of the original three that you mentioned. I use Perplexity AI to ask questions, not where I'm really looking for help with a email or a research, that I need to do, marketing keywords, anything like that. But I'll use it just for a simple question, like you did, kind of a how to, and that's a
Mhm.
great one. I really enjoy using that. And I just love the fact that AI will just answer the questions, that I don't have to then
Yes.
look at all of these websites that it thinks contains the answer like Google has traditionally done. It actually provides me an answer, but the answer is not always correct. And I can't stress that enough with our listeners, that it's not always right. So don't take it as gospel truth, because it may not be, and you have to check it. One of the things that a company that I own does is we actually create content using AI tools, but I'm very clear, this is AI generated, but it's human reviewed. We still
Mm.
have to touch every piece of content that comes through. The great thing though is it's much more economical for people out there to get blog posts and such that were generated by AI and human reviewed, because you get the best of both worlds. You have a blog post that was written quickly and very well, but you have a human review it to make sure that it's factual, and that it didn't go off on some tangent that you didn't intend it to. So
Mhm.
I just think that there are a lot of business opportunities. If you're not specifically selling AI, that's perfectly fine. But there's a lot of business opportunities to use AI within the business that you have, whatever that may
Oh,
be.
absolutely.
And of
Well,
course,
you'd
we've
asked
been
me.
building up to this. We've had Grammarly, which is a type of AI in and of
Mhm.
itself. We've got a lot of these programs, but now we finally, with the event of ChatGPT, have a comprehensive AI that we can really interact with. And you mentioned giving up Netflix; they cost about the same per month. So,
Yeah. Yeah, it's not a big investment, and
yeah.
I think you make a good point though. A lot of people are, as I mentioned when we started, this is not the Terminator AI from the movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's different.
Mhm.
But like you said, we've been using AI for a long time. I don't know how long, but years I've been using Grammarly on my computer to check for punctuation and make sure that I
Mhm.
use the right tense on things, which I often don't do, and to catch all of that. Well, that's using the same AI technologies that are in ChatGPT and Bard and Claude. So it's a new interface. In fact,
Right.
a lot of people aren't aware of this, but even the OpenAI, the company that owns ChatGPT, their model, their AI models have been available for far longer than the year that ChatGPT has. I don't know exactly, but I want to say approximately 3 to 4 years it's been available. But it never had an interface on top of it that worked for the average person. It was a programming interface, an application program interface or API. And you had to be a programmer pretty much to use it.
Mhm.
ChatGPT was just taking that same API, that interface, but now creating a beautiful shell or an easy to use shell, probably a better word, a user friendly shell to use it within. And that's how it took off and became so popular. So for all of you going, oh, this is brand new and we've got to be scared. No, don't be scared. It's not going away, folks. It's going to be here. And there's so many ways to use it. The other
Mhm.
thing I'd love to add real quick, you'd asked me for some simple tips. Another simple tip, if you're a business owner and you're listening and going, okay, you've talked about a lot here, but what can I do today? As a business owner, if you're not already as a marketer, let me tell you, you should be posting to social media every day. Not one, not every week, but every day. And you may go, I don't know what to talk about. Go to ChatGPT and just say, my business, let's say I'm a chiropractor in Indianapolis. I'm a chiropractor in Indianapolis, Indiana, and I'd like to write a social media post in educating people about the benefits of chiropractic for pain management. And it will then create a social media post for you. You can proof it, as Beth has recommended. So important, make sure it's good. And you can post it. And with the new tools nowadays, it'll even create an image for you that you can post with your social media. If you would take 5 minutes a day, or for that matter, have your receptionist take 5 minutes a day to do that, you can start using AI immediately to bring business value back to your business.
Mhm. Mhm. That's really good advice. I think that having some very practical, easy things that people can do just to save themselves some time and be more efficient is just a great use of AI. And it is relatively inexpensive, which I think is really incredible. We talked a little bit about interface, how the interface has
Mhm.
changed, that we've had AI around for a while. I think that interface will really continue to change. And my guess is that the makers, the writers, the coders will make it more and more humanoid, if you would. So maybe at some point we'll actually see a face on our screen,
Mhm.
because I mean, there's video now that is that called deep fake, that they're using AI. There's definitely programs out there like Midjourney that do illustrations, uh, photos and pictures that look like, well, lots of different things. It can be illustrations. It can look like it was done by a digital camera. So there's already video AI, and there's photography AI. It's not just in the manner of
So
written
true.
text, which brings me to an instance, in the car recently. I came and got into the car. I had been running an errand and you had stayed in the car, mostly so I think you could play with your AI and talk about, some
Probably.
And what was funny is that he was actually talking to you. I heard a voice. Tell me about
Yes.
that.
Well, probably the best way to do it is to demonstrate it here, which I'll go ahead and get started on my phone. So you can now talk to ChatGPT, and I'm doing it right now. I'll have my phone up here. So ChatGPT, tell us what a large language model is. It's thinking now. The cloud's changed.
Sure, let's break it down. Imagine a large language model as a super smart library robot. It's been taught to read and understand a massive amount of books, articles, and websites. Think of all the different topics it's learned, from cooking recipes to space science. Now, this robot doesn't just repeat what it's read. It's clever enough to take what it knows and answer questions, write stories, or even help with business ideas. Kind of like a really well-read friend who's great at explaining things. So when you chat with me, ChatGPT, it's like tapping into that vast knowledge. I use everything I've learned to give you helpful, accurate, and clear answers. It's like having a conversation with a library that can talk back. Does that help paint a picture?
It does. Thank you. I'm brand new to using ChatGPT. Can you give me one practical thing I can do today to learn how to use ChatGPT?
Absolutely. A great way to start is by asking ChatGPT to brainstorm content ideas for a specific topic. Since you're in digital marketing, try asking for ideas like blog post titles or social media post themes related to digital marketing trends. This exercise will show you how ChatGPT can be a creative tool in generating ideas and even offer outlines or draft content for these ideas. Give it a try with a topic you're currently focusing on. How does that sound?
I love
And
that.
I could go on and on. Now, one of the questions I know people are likely to have is, how does it know that I'm in digital marketing? I mentioned something earlier, and if you're, well, actually, it's available for free or not. Custom G or Chat GPT has something called custom instructions, and it's two text boxes. Each can take up to about 1,500 characters, where you can give it information about yourself as well as how you would like it to respond, what tone and style. I have that turned on because I want it to respond as I might. And based on that, as you could hear from that conversation, it knows that I'm in the digital marketing space because I've given it that information. It doesn't know that because it's nefarious and has figured something out. I've given it that information. But you're absolutely right. You can converse with it. And I do that frequently because it's a great way to just, again, in a more collaborative fashion, in a way that I'm more comfortable, share information. And let's face it, it's easier to speak into it and give it details sometimes than it is to type. I'm not
Mhm.
always in a spot where I can type. As we talked the other day when I was sitting in my vehicle and waiting, you came back in and caught me mid conversation with my new best friend, ChatGPT.
I'll try not to take offense to the new best friend
Oh,
part,
I'm
but I
kidding. I'm
certainly
kidding on
I
that.
certainly can appreciate I'm not as much of a talker as you are, and, having, an audio dialogue going just really keeps your mind active and occupied, and I know that that's very, attractive and helpful for you. Um, I think that that is just such a great part of AI though, because I know we took a long trip from Grand Rapids to Alabama, and during the trip, we'd be talking and there'd be some topic that we didn't know the answer to or what something was. Maybe we saw a landmark or a place and we wanted to get information about it. And we just asked ChatGPT while we were driving. We didn't have to type it in. We didn't have to take our eyes off the road. And it would then tell us, and then that would, continue our conversation. And it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. It's a great learning tool. I think that
It
AI
is.
can be a huge educational tool for people at any age.
Well, and I think, I'd like to recommend that to the business owners that are listening. I so encourage you to encourage your team to use
Yes.
ChatGPT in ways that help out. And one of the simplest ways to do that is to learn something. So I'm going to guess in virtually any business that's out there, if you have team members, there are items that you wish they were learning more about. Give them the ability to spend 30 minutes talking to ChatGPT or an hour, asking it questions and learning about a particular topic that's relevant to their job and your business. Maybe they're a project manager or an assistant in an area and you want them to learn something, or maybe they're in marketing. It doesn't really matter. Ask them to explain that and encourage them to have I'm trying to think of the right word here. I'm losing my thoughts, but to basically have the confidence to ask questions they're not sure about. I've been
Mhm.
in digital marketing as an example for almost 15 years. And the other day I was watching a video and somebody talked about a specific way that they had been near a location, and then there was a sign at that location that literally started giving them messaging on their phone about what they were doing. And I was like, man, I don't know even how they do that. I've been in digital marketing for 15 years. That's not what I do. So I didn't know anything about it. I went to ChatGPT and I asked it, how did that happen? And it told me that it was using RFID to do that. And then
Wow.
it explained how it did that using Bluetooth technologies. And that was very informative. It was helpful. It gives me more perspective. I may never use that in that case, but in the past, I would have had to Google it. And as sometimes we know, if we don't know a topic, especially, there was no way for me to go to Google and say, so I just heard on a video that you can walk up to a building and that building can somehow geotag you and
Right.
follow you with
Mhm.
ads. Google would have not given me a good response to that.
No.
But when I did that in Perplexity, it gave me the technologies that it was likely using. It gave me 3. And then I was able to go into ChatGPT and ask it for information on those. And one of them very clearly was the wrong technology as I learned about it. And then I said, well, it can't be this technology because of the following features. And it said, well, then it
Mhm.
must be this. And it literally helped me analyze and work through that process. And to
Right.
me, as a lifelong learner, that was hugely valuable.
Mhm, mhm. I think that reminds me of an article that I read about how doctors, physicians were starting to use AI to help them diagnose cases. And, I've always felt that one person trying to figure something out, you can get a good answer. If they're really, really intelligent, you can get a better answer. But if you have 5 people talking something through, you have that process of synergy that gives you an even better answer. And I feel like that's what AI is, and that it's a no brainer that we should use this to our advantage for the betterment of mankind. And so the fact that these doctors were using it to help diagnose patients and even to help treat diseases better, I thought was just a phenomenal use of it. So there's so many positive things that can
Mm.
come out of it. But we have to remember, just way back when I was learning DOS, if you remember that, it was all about garbage in, garbage out. So
Yep.
whatever you give it, if you give it bad stuff, it's not going to give you something good back. It's going to give you bad stuff back. So the quality, the content that you put in, the instructions, the prompts, the knowledge, the feedback, the information, that is all going to greatly affect what you get back out. And if it's not quite what you want, you can then ask it to adjust. So it's just a great interface. And I know a year ago, well, not quite a year ago, at Valor Circle, I started an initiative of really pushing my team to find ways in their job that they could use Chat GPT and, demonstrating some. I even had you speak to them about some different ways that you had found to use it. Well, now we are, last summer to this winter, and I am thrilled with how many of my team members daily use Chat GPT to help them do their job faster and better.
Well, and that's it, because as business owners, if we can be more efficient and save time, that means we can increase margins and in my mind, we can do it together. We can deliver more value to our clients. And I'm a big believer that the more value we deliver, the longer term and the larger those lifetime values become on those clients, because we're adding more value to their lives. And
Absolutely.
AI is a great way to do that.
It's one of the reasons I really love digital marketing, because part of what we do is help our clients uh, have more success, to reach their target audience, to be able to close more deals, to be able to make more money, to live a better life. And it's important that they do that as efficiently as possible as well, and they can use AI, and I like to be able to show them some of those ways that it can impact them.
No, absolutely. Well, again, I think there's so much to be said there. We could obviously go on for a very long time
Long
about this, but
time.
I hope this has given our audience at least the encouragement to give it a try, to try to learn things, and if I can give any other advice, it's when you get started with AI, you're going to get bombarded with people trying to sell you courses. And in particular, my least favorite is buy my list of 1,000 prompts that you can use to grow your business. Do everything in your power to not buy those lists of prompts. And the reason is I bought a lot of them for the groups I'm in and to try to analyze them. And while occasionally there is a gem in the midst of them, 99.999% of the time, you get a list of things that are like, this was worthless. Take your time to learn how to chat with ChatGPT, how to prompt it, how to ask it questions, and you will get far, far better results. And it will take you far less time than reading through the list. Give you one quick example. I just bought one of these last week to see if it was any good. And it was 2,500 prompts to help you run your business. I gave up after reading about 25 of them because they were absolutely useless. It just, I mean, I can't even begin to describe how useless they were. Now, the good news, it cost me $27. It's not the end of the world, but it cost me $27. And more importantly, it probably cost me an hour of my time to read the sales thing, to buy it, and then to research it, and only to then give feedback to the clients that had asked me about it. I don't recommend buying this. So when you start getting bombarded with those things, folks, if you're like me and you go, oh, I want to learn that. If it's teaching you how to prompt, that may be okay. But if it's going to give you a list of prompts you can use, there's so many for free. In fact, if you want a list, I've got a list. I'll send it to you, and I'll give it to you for free. Just reach out. It's easy. jonathanmast.com/linktree. You'll see it right there. I'll literally give you those prompts for free. Not the ones I bought, by the way. Those are copyrighted, but I'll give you a great list. Don't blow your money on all the things that are going to start selling. And don't try to buy all these specialty tools. Focus on ChatGPT, on Bard, and Claude. Those are the ones that you need to get started with. And over time, if you need more, it'll become obvious.
I think it would be really helpful too for people to join AI groups. Like you have one on Facebook that I think would be a fabulous benefit to them. No charge, obviously. And there's lots of giveaways in there of prompts and ideas and keeping them updated on the latest news and happenings. Is that something we could post below for people to see?
We certainly can. In fact, let me see if I can bring that up here. There we go. So if they just go to my website at whitebeardstrategies.com/AI group, it'll forward them right to the Facebook spot. They can go and they can see that. That is, by the way, a free group. It is private, so you do need to request access, but it's all about prompting for AI. So if you want to learn and be inspired, we've got literally, as of this morning, over 20,000 other entrepreneurs in that group. Let me go look. We're actually almost at 21,000. Yesterday we hit 20,000. We're, as I look at this, are at 20,837. So we're growing quickly. Lots of people joining us. Lots of content. We average literally dozens of shares every day, sharing prompts, sharing how you can work on things. It's free, folks. Don't go pay money for this. It's not worth it.
Well, thank you so much, Jonathan. We should probably wrap up because I can hear that the household has woke up and they're making a lot of noise. So you want to close us up for today?
I will. I want to thank everybody for sticking with us, and I want to encourage you, if you like our podcast, please subscribe and like it. That really is value to us. We would also love your feedback as Beth and I talk about different topics, from partnership to entrepreneurship to things like AI that obviously really keep me excited. If you've got questions, reach out. You'll be able to see our contact information below. You can reach Beth at valorcircle.com. You can reach me at jonathan@whitebeardstrategies.com. And we would love to hear from you and know how we're doing, as well as help you grow your businesses. With that, make it a great day, everybody, and thanks so much.
Bye-bye.